are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I am Mosher. He is Landon McCool, and the Cowboys get a much-needed win over the Saints, 27-17. Landon, we're going to just jump right into it. Should you feel good about this win for the Cowboys?
I think it's okay to feel neutral, honestly, about it, because there's plenty of to be concerned about just based on what we saw. I think there's also plenty of reason. I think this is this is, to me, this is what we were talking about before we came on the air. This, to me, was the definition of a trap game. You've got a lot of excuses built in why you should lose this game. You're playing in a tough place. You're playing without your head coach. Despite all the players that you got back, this week, you're a pretty beat up team. And a lot of those players that came back, were playing in a very extremely limited role. The Saints had an unconventional offense that was, probably difficult to prepare for, and certainly hadn't been seen unleashed quite like this. I think this was a game that the Cowboys easily could have lost and have lost in the past, and they didn't. However, I mean, it's absolutely impossible to come out of that game and not feel, again, concerned that the offense just looked sluggish, and it didn't, to me, seem like it was execution as much as I think there was play calling issues. I think there was how the coaches were trusting the offense issues that really played out in I think something like 6 3-and-outs for the offense. So, it's a win. You won a dirty game, an ugly game, which is an important thing to do in the NFL. So you should feel good about that. We should have a Victory Friday tomorrow, which is one of the best kind of victory days, because you get a double whammy. It's Friday and you won.
Yeah.
But I think we're got a lot to talk about over the next week, because I think this offense still has a ways to go to get right. I think they can. We'll talk about that, but there's a lot to dig into, and not all of it is positive.
Can I talk out of both sides of my mouth for just a little bit?
I feel like I did, so please, yes.
I was gonna say, I was hoping for like the snarky comment. Would you say it's be no different than usual? Listen, it's really hard to win in the NFL. We should never be upset about a win, ever, right? Especially when you go on the road after just playing 2 games in 4 days, and now you only have 7 days, and it was such a weird week for the Cowboys for 17 different reasons,
oh my gosh.
right?
Yeah.
So going in and getting a double-digit point win, and really, this is really like a 17-point win. You were up by 17 points with 2 minutes left in this game. It wasn't really all that close. However, there are things like you're going into meetings on Saturday and Sunday. There's a lot to work on here, right? Like,
oh yeah,
this team, the way it's currently playing, it's not playing like a Super Bowl caliber team. It's not playing like a team that's probably going to get out of the first round. Does that mean that we can't eventually get there? No, that's certainly not the case. But I just think I'm never going to apologize for winning a game. Especially after how the last couple of weeks are gone. Let's just enjoy this win, right?
I would have taken that Raiders win.
Yeah. So
if they win that game,
my Thanksgiving, right? My apple pie would have tasted so much better if they won that game.
Look, we have high expectations for this team because they've shown us what they can do, right? And I think that it's not unhealthy or unfan-like to expect your team to play better against a lesser opponent. I mean, they listen. The Saints, they played fantastic on defense. Sean Payton play calling is out of his mind. He's just the way he can squeeze.
He's such a way he can coordinator.
Yeah, both of them, Dennis Allen and Payton, are both incredible coaches. I mean, there's Payton even more so because he's squeezing water out of a stone. They got nothing on that side of the ball, and he's just scheming guys open, making easy throws that even a guy as terrible as we saw, Taysom Hill, could make and get big gains. So I think again, this was a very bizarre game for all the reasons that we mentioned. You lose your head coach to COVID. How many times do you lose your head coach midweek? Right?
Well,
It's
and
like,
it's not even just your head coach,
yeah,
right? Like
well,
I
it's your
think it would be
offensive line
something.
coach.
It
Go
would
ahead.
be different if it was one coach, but it's your offensive line coaches, your strength and conditioning coaches. I mean, it was a lot of people.
And all the shuffling that you had to do to make up for that, everyone having to kind of do slightly different jobs than what they're used to. It's disjointing. And even with Cooper back in the lineup, the offense couldn't really rely on him outside of third downs. And on top of that, the insistence kind of to just continually hit inefficient runs in the middle of the offensive line that weren't working. I think the Cowboys clearly had a plan to try to get the Saints out of the too high shell, and that involves trying to run the football a lot. But there was a certain point when at least mix up the sequencing, right? And that's what it felt like the problem was on this. We've really talked about play sequencing with these guys and how good it has been throughout the year. And I think we need to point out when it's bad. And for the last 2 or 3 games, I understand who you have playing in these games, but this week you had everybody short of a fully healthy Cooper who was in the game, but just wasn't in the game all the time. And the play sequencing sucked. It's everyone except for Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy apparently doesn't realize that Zeke is hurt. And it's just, I've been as much of a Zeke apologist as anybody here. I think you can attest to that. I don't know what's going on here where we can't at least accept the fact that Zeke should be getting a third, if less of the carries at this point, and maybe just being in on pass protection situations where you need him. But I just at this point, and why they insist on trying to hit the middle of that defense instead of going outside early. I don't. Did they even attempt an outside run outside of what they're calling CeeDee Lamb's catch and run?
Yeah, Pollard
in the first half. No, I'm talking about Lamb's outside of. Yeah, Pollard's touchdown, but I'm saying in the first half.
No.
Did they even attempt? Yeah, I mean that's kind of ridiculous,
I want to save some of the offensive struggles for our third segment because we're going to get into that. But
okay,
again, they're 8-4. This stretch did not go exactly. They were the way they were playing the 3-game stretch. They went 1-2. But they're fine, right? They're 8-4. Yeah. They're going to be in the hunt to maybe be the 2 seed or the 3 seed. You got to win. Big picture, this is okay. I want to talk about the defense, so Landon. But before we do that, tell you guys about Built Bar. It's the best tasting protein bar out there. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate, amazing flavors. It's just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Best of all, they taste fantastic. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCK10 and you will get $10 off your next box at BuiltBar.com. All right, let's talk about the defense. So if you look at the stats, and stats can be very deceiving here, Cowboys gave up 405 yards of offense to the Saints. Taysom Hill had 100 rushing yards in this game, 11 carries for 100 yards. The Saints ran for 153 yards, and yet the defense of the Cowboys absolutely dominated this game for several different reasons. 4 interceptions in this game. They had a couple sacks on Taysom Hill. They really had him not feeling comfortable in the pocket at all. I first want to start with Demarcus Lawrence. How nice is it to have him back in the lineup?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, it was especially huge this week because you needed somebody to be a dominant run player. And I feel like he was, when he was on the field, he was winning his matchups for sure.
I can't imagine what it would look like if he was not out there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of, we went back at the beginning of the season, and if you listen, we talked about how a lot of these teams, this is kind of a philosophy of the Staley defenses. And I think for the Cowboys in a large degree now, you have to have a hole somewhere on your defense. And right now, they're having a hard time against these teams that want to line up and run the kind of zone read stuff because you obviously gain an extra gap with the quarterback as an extra runner. And then just, kind of lining up and stopping the run. When it gets into the red zone, they're able to kind of clamp down a little bit and they're able to get off the field. But overall, they're giving up a ton of yardage. And ultimately, look at what the result is. It doesn't mean much. Getting a bunch of yards on the ground ultimately doesn't mean much if you can't score points. Yeah. And the Saints couldn't do that. They were picking up chunk plays, but considering they got, what'd you say the total yardage was? 435
405 yards.
405. They had 17 points, and that's ultimately what matters. So
and they
I
had
think
10 in the first 58 minutes of this game.
Yeah. And that's why I saw some people complaining about, one of those punts a little bit later in the game. And I was sitting there going, you put them inside the 15-yard line and they can't throw the ball. They're going to kill the clock for you because the Cowboys can't run the football.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where this was, like I said, a very weird game that looked way more ugly on the defensive side because it looked like you were going to bleed out in running yards, but ultimately it was a scratch. It was that it wasn't so bad. And I think, the fact that they were able to consistently get turnovers, make plays in the ball. Some of those there were gimmies, but they still made plays in the ball, which is impressive. Hill was under pressure all game long. There was good pressure. I think there was times when, he was able to get back there and throw because the Cowboys weren't even expecting him to throw. They were running so much, but short of a couple lapses early in the game, I thought the defense overall played really well, despite their kind of struggles to stop Taysom Hill running game, which, like I said, this was exactly what we talked about before in the week, right? Like a difficult kind of tricky offense with a lot of QB run stuff. It's difficult to prepare for, but ultimately it's not usually a winning combination on its own if you can't throw the football.
What I love in this for the defense is all their stars made plays when they needed to, right? Demarcus Lawrence got, I don't know how many pressures in this game, but he hit Taysom Hill all night long. Micah Parsons got a huge sack on a third down that forced the Saints to punt rather than kick a field goal. Trevon Diggs got an interception, and then Carlos Watkins had a pick six. So all their stars made plays.
Yeah, I mean it's.
I threw Carlos Watkins in there as a star. You didn't.
I didn't even catch that because Carlos Watkins is such a star in my mind that I just glossed right over your joke. I apologize, but I mean, look. If you're going to absorb the loss of a Brent Urban, you need guys like Carlos Watkins to make plays. I don't know that any of us were expecting a pick six, but
just a clean pick six too. Like not even when it's just tipped, like a just incredible catch.
It was. Nuts,
I want to go back to Parsons for a second. The sack was unbelievable. Wasn't even his best play of the day. The route or the job he did covering, was it a wheel route? Where he got beat initially,
like
he was able to force basically the receiver to have the ball clunk off his hands, and then Jaron Kearse to intercept it. I mean, just it was an incredible play by him. I thought Parsons in this game, going back to more of an off-the-ball linebacker, was just incredible.
More displaying of just like that he can do everything, and just kind of more padding the resume. He's way past defensive rookie of the year. I mean, that's like that got sealed up weeks ago.
Sacks
frankly.
Already.
He's defensive player of the year nominee at this point.
And he's certainly in the conversation, right?
And this was a resume builder for that. I don't know if he actually wins the award, but I mean, I think more games like this, and he's had a game like this seemingly for the last 4 or 5 weeks. It's going to be hard to make an argument against him, honestly.
And Diggs had an interception, as we mentioned. He almost had like 3 other ones in this game. You could just feel it. Like I don't know. I just get the sense now, like, okay, Diggs is going to get one. He's really, really close. He did ultimately get one. The Cowboys went 3 and out on the next drive, and it didn't really end up mattering too much. But hey, he got his 9th interception of the season. I actually think the defense played really well, and there's a couple spots on their defense that, man, they can just have little improvements, whether it's guys coming back from injury, the defensive tackles, Tristan Hill, Neville Gallimore, one of the linebacker spots, I don't want to mention who, Van Der Esch. And then KZ was up and down in this game. But other than that, I thought the rest of the defense was really good. Anthony Brown, I thought, was so much better this week than he was last week. Just kudos to them. They won this game for Dallas. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they played fantastic. Like I said, it doesn't look as pretty. It certainly didn't look as pretty in the first half. But, you ultimately look at what happened by the end of the game with the final score, and you're totally thrilled with the results.
All right, I want to talk about the offense because that's the story of this game. But before we do that, tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC. right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. All right, Landon, do you know how many drives the Cowboys had in this game?
I don't actually.
14 offensive drives. They scored 20 points on offense. They were 2 of 13 on third down in this game. Yikes.
It's a problem, I mean, and again, like the problem is that they shouldn't have to rely on third downs. The problem is that they got in too many third downs.
We say that all the time, right? The best way to be good on third down is just to avoid them altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Saints, are a very good defense. And so when you get into third down, you greatly decrease your chance of, obviously converting, because you're getting into a situation they know you have to usually pass, especially in third and long. And again, it goes back to play sequencing. If you're going to continually try to run your head into the wall and accept, no gains and throwing away first downs, and then you're not going to actually go for it on fourth down, until later points, then you're really limiting your ability to convert on these drives. And the Cowboys were putting themselves consistently into third and longs and allowing the Saints to attack them down, blitz them, and then play coverage in the back end. And the Saints are one of the few teams, again, that has pretty good coverage on the back end, so that they can, and again, a very good defensive coordinator who can fool you with interesting blitz and interesting coverages behind those blitz, and make this a much more difficult game than it really needed to be. And that's where I think I'm frustrated, is that it feels like you've got your guys back now. I understand that Cooper's still not 100%, but it felt like they had success being aggressive at times, and they kind of went away from that. And I guess I understand the idea of trying to pull them out of their shell with the run game, but you're not pulling them out of the shell with the run game if you're not gaining any yards. If you're consistently not able to run the football, they should have tried something else earlier in the game, and they waited, I guess, until the second half to try to attempt an outside run short, like I said, outside of the tunnel screen to Lamb in the first half. So that part was extremely frustrating, and it led to a lot of frustrations. And then, throughout the game, it just felt like, things were just a little bit off and staggered, and they weren't able to get a rhythm other than like a small part of, like, what was it, the second quarter, when they had 2 or 3 drives in a row. I think they had some success. Yeah, it's just, they have 10 days to get things right, and I do have confidence that they can. But again, it's hard not to point back to first of all the unnecessary shuffling that happened on the offensive line, less than 2 weeks ago. It still feels
I got
like
a feeling we're probably going to do more shuffling next week, right?
We'll see. I don't know. Like, that's the thing that's frustrating about this, is that, like, I felt like the pass protection was pretty decent, but the run game looked like it was suffering. And
so
and
then what's the point of playing Connor McGovern at left guard if your run game's going to continue to struggle? Just give me the better pass blocker.
Yeah, again, I wasn't necessarily advocating for Connor McGovern to come in over Connor Williams, and I wasn't necessarily advocating for Terrence Steele to come in over Leo Collins. So I don't know. The good news is they've got, like I said, an extended break to kind of figure this out before, hey, you got to win. You got to win these division games. You can at least
you got some good defensive lines coming up as well.
Yeah, and you certainly need to survive the next few weeks. So the Cowboys need to figure that out. I think they have the players and the system to do it. I think they need to get back in sync. It just felt like, there was too many times when Dak was out of sync with the receiver, with the play caller, and the quarterback seemed like they were out of sync. And they just need to kind of have a normal week. Maybe, honestly, maybe that's it. They just haven't had a normal week in weeks, and it shows. It looks like they're disjointed.
I agree with you. Although I thought the pass protection as a whole was pretty good today.
The pass protection was good. Yeah.
Dak got sacked, twice in this game? Once. And the one sack was really more of a coverage sack. He kind of held the ball.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought the pass protection was fine. There was one time where Tyron kind of got spun into and the guy hit Dak in the helmet, and that was the interception. But I don't know. I don't feel like that's the biggest concern. I really don't. I think the play sequencing, as you mentioned, and I still think they really miss a healthy Amari Cooper. He played 24 snaps today.
Oh, yeah.
And on the drive that he played the third down and caught the 35-yard pass, they scored a touchdown on. And it was really the only good offensive drive they had all day, where they walked the ball up and down the field. It just feels like without Amari, things are so hard for this offense, and I'm not sure why. Is it because they don't have anybody that can win on the outside quickly? Is it because teams are just defending them differently? I don't know. But, man, they miss a healthy Amari.
Well, if they don't have Amari, they have to be able to run the football. They can't not have both, right? And I think that's the issue, is that they need a solid running game. Without Amari Cooper, they don't have 3 elite wide receivers who can beat man coverage by themselves. So you need a running game to draw bodies away, to open things up down the field for Gallup and open things up for these guys. And I think the problem is when your running game is struggling and you don't have Cooper, it becomes a tough slog, because they can do a lot more things to you to kind of take away the remaining guys on your team that are kind of who you would be targeting, CeeDee Lamb and
I will also say this. I think the offense is missing a little bit of Blake Jarwin, just somebody else that can stretch the defense vertically from the middle, because we both love Dalton Schultz, but that's not really his game, right? If you have another tight end that you feel comfortable, doing some play action rollouts and getting him the ball up the field, Sean McEwen's just not that right now, and he's just not the athlete. Not having him in combination with having a banged up Zeke and having a less than 100% Amari Cooper has definitely hurt this offense. I'm still Landon. They can be so much better. That's what's frustrating.
Absolutely.
They only scored 20 points in this game. They can be a lot better than what we saw in this one.
Absolutely, and I think they will. I mean, I still have confidence that they will, because we see it still, right? Like, they get into 2-minute offense and Dak goes, 8 of 9, and goes 95 yards to set up a field goal before the half, or when they get to a down to a certain point, they start putting the foot on the gas. Dak still dices people, right? It's just they need to figure out where the run game went. First of all, the run game just in general seems static. Like I don't want to endorse just running the football for running the football, like
just for numbers' sake, right? Just for balance.
We're trying to get yardage here, so let's diversify the run game. Let's more outside stuff. If you need a power, like the power worked immediately as soon as they ran it. It's like so run some more of the G sweeps. Get guys on the move outside. You've got athletic offensive linemen. Like, I don't know why they weren't using them. They were just trying to move people off the ball vertically, and it wasn't working. And I think, again, you need to just understand where your team is at this point and understand that running Zeke Elliott as in his current state in the middle of this middle of the defensive line is not a winning play, and it certainly isn't something that you should be starting half of your drives with. Like,
well, explain to me why Zeke had twice as many touches in this game as Tony Pollard.
I can't really. I really can't.
It was so obvious on the one play where Zeke got to the outside because of good blocking, and he can't run. Like, that should have been like a 15 or 20-yard gain. Like, for Zeke, that's a 15, 20-yard gain, and he just can't do it. Like, he can't get to a third gear, like, not much less like his fourth gear. And it's not to say that Pollard would be crushing the inside runs, because I don't think he would, because the blocking is just not there. It's just, does Zeke Elliott really need to take that many touches? Like, I get it. He's still fine in short yardage, and if you want him out there pass protecting, I get it. But, man, it doesn't make sense to give him 13 carries and Pollard only gets 7, especially after Pollard showed you what he can do in space. It still just is mind-boggling to me. That's all.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it does. I don't think it really would have mattered too much. I mean, Pollard had to break 2 pretty serious tackles to make that long touchdown. He can't do that every play. You know what I'm saying? So at some point, you gotta figure out a way to block better. You gotta tighten up your blocking. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think maybe they missed their offensive line coaches more than they missed their head coach in this game.
Which makes sense on game day, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It does, because I think an offensive line coach would have said, "Hey, let's mix up the play calling here. These guys they're not having success trying to get vertically, pushing these guys off the ball. Let's get the ball outside a little bit."
Let's talk about Dak a little bit in this game. 26 of 40, 238 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Has not played particularly well since the Kansas City game. Are you nervous about him at all?
No, I mean, I think he had some the interception probably should have been a penalty on New
Probably should have thrown it though. Anyways, I don't think the CD wasn't open.
That too. I don't know. I think I don't think he was off so much as I think that there are communication and a lack of sync between him and his wide receivers right now. I think that's more my concern, is that it just feels like these guys are just out of sync in a lot of ways. I mean, I thought Dak made some incredible throws tonight.
Oh, the CD Lamb was one of the best throws he's made this season.
Absolutely absurd. Yeah, and just I mean, people don't realize, but that the fades that the goal line fades.
Gallup,
that's a typical throw too. And Gallup obviously had the hardest part of the job, no doubt.
No, he missed the touchdown to CD Lamb on fourth down. It just, if he lobs that ball a little high.
I want to hear what happened there, because honestly, even watching that live, I think CD Lamb was supposed to turn the other way.
So Aikman made it seem like
I wasn't listening to what Aikman. I was listening to Shams. What they say?
I said Aikman made it seem like CD ran the right route. It's just up to Dak to throw that ball with a lot more loft so CD can adjust to it, not throw it on the line.
I mean, I certainly am not.
I don't know that either.
I don't know more than Aikman, but yeah, just that's what it looked like to me, because he was coming back in and there was no one in the middle of the field behind him. So I didn't understand why. That's why I thought the play design was leading him there. That's what my assumption was. So maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I mean, I think he missed. Either way, they didn't connect there, and like that goes back to, again, it's like whether it's Dak not throwing the ball well or they're out of sync. I'm not worried about Dak, long term. I'm worried about this offense getting back in sync, and I think that they will.
All right, Landon. Well, we covered the Cowboys win. They are 8-4 going into the week 13. We get to watch Washington play the Raiders. We get to just sit back for the next 10 days and think about this awesome win. I'm just going to keep saying how great it is to win, because, man, I really missed the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, right? Like we should not take it for granted. I mean, we only get if we're lucky, we get 10 plus of these a year, and in the off season we don't get anything. So
and part of the reason why I'm saying this is a good win, because I remember last year where it sucked to lose all those games straight, and then when you do win a game, it doesn't really matter because you're out of playoff contention. To win a game on the road against a team that has playoff aspirations when you're struggling is great. So it's not perfect. They've got a lot to work on, but they needed that win and they got it done.
Yeah, I would say the last thing for me is that this was a tough game. Like, I think we knew that this potentially was going to be a tough game going in. I don't think anybody liked the way that ultimately the offense played, but we came out with the win. And I think now we've got a mini bye to kind of course correct things going into the final run. We're getting players back. Things certainly could be looking up here. Going into a win as opposed to a loss was a huge difference, and we should recognize that.
Last thing before we head out.
We've
talked about this during the offseason about having different paths to victory. And we said we kind of thought going into the year, the Cowboys were going to have to be an offense that scored in the upper 20s every game, and the defense would need to just make a couple stops a game to win, right?
Yeah.
Good teams have a lot of different ways to win. If your offense is having a bad day, like they did, can your defense step up and make stops and win a game for you? They just did that on the road. They got 4 turnovers. They forced multiple punts when they needed to. They gave up 10 points again in the first 58 minutes of this game. That's the formula for a good team. Find ways to win games when everything's not going perfectly.
Absolutely. And the defense deserves all the accommodations it's getting because, again, to rewind, we hoped this would be a middle of the pack defense. And now we're seeing that this is a defense that, again, bled a lot in the running game, but when it came down to when they needed it, their big players made big plays. And if you can, rely on that, here and there on the weeks when your offense isn't performing the way it's supposed to, that's how you win the games you're supposed to, and you win the games that maybe you're not supposed to.
Week 14, the Cowboys could possibly have Micah Parsons, Randy Gregory, Neville Gallimore, Demarcus Lawrence all playing at the same time in their front seven. That would be quite the sight to see. So you get that to look forward to over the weekend and throughout all next week. We'll be back on Monday. We'll talk about some of the All-22 stuff that we watched over the weekend. We'll talk about some of the rest of the stuff that's going on in the NFC. Let's see which team slips up this week between Washington, the Eagles, and the Giants, because at least one of them will. It's inevitable, right?
Oh, yeah.
So thank you guys for watching. You can download the show wherever you get your podcast. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I am at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy your victory